What's going on YouTube? In this video, I'm going to give you guys the first major update on my HK417 project. So if you haven't seen the previous video in the series introducing the 417 as a platform and the history of that platform and the different variants of it used by the US military, I will leave a link to that down in the description. You should check that out. So this is the first major update in this build series, and it may look like we've taken a step backwards since we have the rifle all taken apart and the receivers are just an empty shell at this point. But there's actually quite a bit that has been done to this, and I cannot thank Sigwo Arms in Springfield, Missouri enough for putting up with my level of detail and just sheer autism that I hit them with on this project. They did quite a bit to make this receiver set and the rail more closely resemble a real 417, and I'll just go kind of piece by piece and explain what all we did. So starting with the rail, I did not have this in the last video, but this is an HK 9-inch quad rail for the MR762 or 417. So I stripped down the rail, took out the two retaining screws because those are currently being machined at a different machine shop to more closely resemble the screws that are issued on the 417. The difference being that the screws that this came with are for a commercial rifle and just use a hex wrench. But the ones for the military 417s, actually you can use the lugs on the bolt to loosen these in the field, so that negates the need to carry a tool with you. So I'm just having a machine shop essentially drill out those hex key slots and then put in the T slots, which I'll clip in a photo of here. Sigwo Arms actually modified the front of the rail to give me access to the adjustable gas block, which I hopefully at some point will find for this rifle. They added the laser engravings for the N and S, which I believe is non-suppressed and suppressed, or some German words that I'm unaware of. But yeah, they added this square hole and the engravings, which very, very closely resemble the factory handguard that comes with that feature. They also ended up re-cerakoting the entire rail. Since we added that cut, it was better to just re-cerakote the whole rail. They also added the numbers on all the Picatinny lugs. And we used the same font, same sizing, and everything as the original rail. So unless you held this side by side with a factory anodized rail, it would be very hard to tell the difference in the coatings. We used, for this and for the receivers, a 20-to-1 hardener ratio with graphite black Cerakote, which, in their experience, is the best match for HK factory anodizing. And to my eye, I honestly cannot tell the difference. So, again, huge shout out to Sigwo Arms for taking on this project and just knocking it out of the park. I am just stoked with how these parts turned out. Moving on to the upper. Once again, added the numbers to the Picatinny lugs, because again, this had to be sandblasted off and then recoated in order to add the proper markings. And also, they machined off the fence that was previously around the bolt catch paddle. So I'll clip in a picture before and after. But yeah, it's basically like it wasn't even there before. So on issued 417 rifles prior to the G28 series and the M110A1s, they did not have that fence, and Sigwo Arms was basically able to make this look like it came like this from the factory. So again, very pleased with that. We also changed the proof marks on the front to add what would be on a real 417. And then added the serial number for the upper receiver, which previously was located inside here in the charging handle track. It was relocated to here, where again, it would be on a real 417. So yeah, they knocked that out of the park. And finally, the lower receiver. There's a lot of little details going on here as well. So obviously before, this rifle said HK MR762A1, but we have sandblasted it off and given it the correct markings. This is the correct font, correct spacing. We spent quite a bit of time comparing this with reference photos of real 417s to get this as spot on as possible. And again, huge thank you to Sigwo Arms in Springfield, Missouri. He actually let me sit down with him and, adjust the positioning of all the markings. And, he wanted me to actually be there so he could get my go-ahead before he hit start on every single engraving. He also added the full auto markings on either side, which were previously not there. And they are offset a little bit from the lever stop, unlike the safety marking, which is centered under the lever stop. They're actually offset a little bit on the real guns as well, if you were wondering. So he did replicate that. And then he finished all that off by doing a air cure Cerakote for the infill on all of these markings. So I was previously going to use lacquer sticks, which is kind of an old go-to for filling in these. But I think that the Air Cure Cerakote actually looks a lot better, and it's going to be a lot tougher in the long run than the lacquer sticks. And then finally, we have markings on the front of the magwell, which were previously not there. And the markings on this side of the magwell, which were previously not there. And again, all of this was just translated over from reference photos, and then I found some PDFs online that actually had these sets of markings, so those were easy enough to translate onto the laser engraver. So as far as what is left to do on the rifle, Sigwo Arms still has my barrel, which they are cutting down to 12 inches. They are reprofiling it to more resemble the factory 417 assaulter barrel. They're going to thread it in the 15mm HK factory threads, and they're actually going to mill off the little tab on the receiver extension that prevents a full auto bolt carrier from being dropped in. Now, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to end up putting a full auto bolt carrier in this gun. It would be for looks and for nothing else, since I'm not obviously going to convert it to full auto. But in the future, if that becomes an option, then I decided to go ahead and have them mill that off so that it would be a drop-in fit. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut away right here, and when I come back, I will have all of the guts of the upper and lower reinstalled. It'll be everything minus the barrel and gas system, so I will be right back. All right, and I am back with the receivers mostly reassembled. So one thing I did forget to mention earlier is that Sigwo Arms also did my NFA engraving for this. I had them do it on the inside of the magwell. So we have the manufacturer information and then the actual model of the firearm engraved there. I had them do this before he re-Cerakoted the receiver. That way they'd be more discreet, and turned out pretty good. So lastly, I'll just finish up by talking about some of the other changes I've made to the rifle as far as the lower parts kit goes. In the last video I mentioned I was not a fan of the takedown pins that the commercial rifles come with, since they require a tool to actually push them out. I did swap these out for pins that do not need the tool. The rear pin is easy enough. It's actually a standard AR-15 rear takedown pin. The front, however, is proprietary, so I had to go scour Gunbroker for one of those and pay an outrageous amount, but I did track down that as well. I've also switched to an HK OEM grip. This, I believe, is called their V1 Battle Grip. It's just the standard pistol grip that comes on HK416s and 417s on earlier rifles. And then finally, I have swapped to the standard castle nut for the buffer tube. So all the issued rifles had this original design castle nut. This is proprietary due to the diameter of the buffer tube being larger than a standard AR-15 or AR-10. So I ordered this from HK Parts. I don't think it was that expensive. It was more expensive than a castle nut should be, but so I no longer have the extended castle nut that the newer rifles come with. And I'll end by mentioning the buffer tube itself. This is still the G28 buffer tube that you saw in the last video. I just had Sigwo Arms Cerakote it in black, since the issued guns would have a black buffer tube. But it's worth noting that the original 417 did not have a buffer tube that was compatible with this G28 stock. It lacked a track that's cut into the bottom of the tube that allows the stock to kind of have a stopper that keeps it in place with the use of the spring right here. So on the issued guns that featured the G28 stock, which I'll clip in a picture of here, this cheek piece actually was not fully functional because they were mounting it on a regular HK417 buffer tube. And that's why in those photos you actually see the cheek piece, regardless of where the stock is, the cheek piece will be all the way up here. I have opted to not go that route because it actually requires breaking a little tab off of your stock on the inside, and at this point I'm not really crazy about the thought of that. Some other guys that have cloned these rifles have gone through that process, so I talked to some of them and just decided that at this time I'm not going to bother doing that. But yeah, again, huge shout out to Sigwo Arms. My next update on this build is going to be after the barrel is finished getting cut, when I have the screws in my hand for mounting the handguard up again, and I'll probably hold off on another video until I also have an optic to show you guys. So anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to keep up to date on this build in real time, go follow me on Instagram at inferior_rifles. I post pictures and stories of all the small progressions I make on the rifle in between videos, so go follow me over there, and thank you guys for watching.